welcome to A Celtic World, the Celtic YouTube channel for Celtic fans all over this great big planet. No matter where you're from, we connect Celtic fans from as far afield as Achterarder to Addis Ababa, from Hawick to Honolulu. Like that one, Brian?
Did indeed.
And let's see who's joining us here. We have a new face among us, but let's first of all say hello to an old face. That's Stephen in Australia. How you doing, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. A very old face, as you know. Just mentioning Achterarder there. Great fist upper in Achterarder, as anyone who's travelled down the road from Aberdeen on the day Bollox bus will tell you. It was always a very popular stop-off point. So fond memories of that place. But yeah, good to be here. Good to sort of fill the Celticless void in my life with a bit of chat.
Achterarder is where Stephen Hendry's from, isn't that right? Is he from there?
Yeah, I think he is.
It's near Dunblane. My sister used to live in Dunblane. We'll say hello to another familiar face, Brian. Brian, how's it going?
Not too bad. Yeah, it's snowing here in Banbridge, so there we go. But a temperature difference compared to what you guys are at the minute. Could I mind if it shout out to my son? Just he had an operation last week, so just shout out to Patrick, big Celtic fan. So he's in recovery at the minute. He's going strong. So just wanted to do that for him while he's asleep. I'm staying in his room. I'm in his bedroom at the minute.
Here. Yes, well, we all wish him the very best. Hope he's gets, back to roaring strength very soon. And somebody who's been on the show before, but only the once, is Robert, who was in Scotland, but he's in Singapore. Robert, how's it going?
Good. I was back in Scotland for the whole of December and managed to get to 8 Celtic matches, which I don't think I've managed that for about 40 years. So it was, and it was pretty cold for the most part. So there was a lot of layers of clothing required at Perth and places like that. So, but it was great. 7 wins, 1 defeat. So not too bad.
Fantastic. Well, we had a few issues backstage with volume. So if any of our regular listeners and people who participate in the comments can notice that any one of us is particularly too quiet or too loud, it's very hard for us to tell, actually, when we're doing the show. So please feel free to tell us that someone's a bit too quiet or somebody's a bit too loud. And speaking of people in the comments, let's see who we have joining us. Comments are going crazy. Paddy Lavery from Belfast. Brian says hello. Morning all. Pork Chop Express saying hello to Paddy. Let's tune into their conversation. All good, bud. No, I won't show you the rest of that chat. Michael Ross says hello and asks this pertinent question. Have we signed anyone yet? Well, we're certainly going to get into that. Okay. Tom Mack says hail. Michael Ross, again, wonder if Gav will bless us with another tune. Well, careful what you wish for, sunshine. Might just happen. I don't know if Robert's been present when the music has been bestowed upon the faithful. But,
I was very impressed with the Joe Dolce song "Shut Up in Your Face." That was I did pick that up when I was away, so that's tremendous.
Well, yeah, I mean, it broke the internet. You'd have to be living under a rock to not have noticed that one.
Indeed.
Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today, gents? First up, we're going to talk about players, or as the cool kids are saying, Robert, these days, plers. I don't know why they say it in a Belfast accent, Brian, but there you
Billy
go.
Bingham used to say, sorry, Robert, I cut across here. Billy Bingham used to go, he was a very good plur. Do you remember years ago? Commentary. Pler was I still use the word pler, but it's more in sort of taking the piss and stuff. But there you go.
Well, it's become shorthand, hasn't it, on social media and stuff to talk about plur. Oh, this guy's a player. Anyway, so that's the first one up. Second, we're going to do a little segment called Proven or Project, which is basically in the light of our potential new signing, you can see a lot of division among Celtic fans. Some saying not another bloody project, and others saying he's not a project. He's a quality player. He's going to add to the team. So we're going to take a little look back in history at some of those who've surprised us on either side of that particular argument. Number 3 is entitled Nora Lender B, which is a Shakespearean reference that I'm sure Robert, the very learned man, knows all about.
Not on Shakespeare.
Well, we're going to talk about the sort of loan market. We've just loaned someone out, so we're going to talk about lending players out and other ways of our fringe players getting more game time, so we can know more about them. And finally, social media is the last bit. Just looking to see, all sounding fine so far, says the Pork Chop Express. Look at this cheeky one. Paddy Lavery. You can always rely on Paddy. Okay, so first thing is plers. What's the news? We were asked there in the comments if we'd signed anyone. Do we now consider Nicholas Kuhn to be a Celtic player yet, Stephen?
Yeah, I think so. I think we can pretty much count that as a done deal. I don't see anything happening with that one other than I'm getting announced probably later today or maybe tomorrow. But whether or not there's anybody following him in through the revolving door, I'm not too sure about that. There's been a few rumours, a couple of guys in the comments that have mentioned the Liverpool goalkeeper. And I thought maybe with two Irishmen on the show tonight, and I'm sure you're both Brian and Gav are both fluent Irish speakers. Can you definitively tell me the pronunciation of the Liverpool goalkeeper's first name?
Keeving, is it? Keeving Kelleher.
I'll go with that.
Keeving. Okay.
Keeving, like Kevin, but if you say Keeving instead of an E, you put an A in, so Keeving.
As in
Keeving Keller.
We're going spelunking this weekend. Caving.
Keeving.
We're going with Keeving Kelleher. Is that right?
Keeving.
Yeah,
Kevin with 2 E's. Kevin with 2 E's, is it? Keeving. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
All
well,
right.
Hopefully, I mean, it's not like Celtic fans have a bad track record in pronouncing names correctly. I give you Noraki, for example. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
You need to let it go.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But surely finances are going to make Kelleher impossible. Brian, he's on a big wage, and they'd be looking for tons of money for him.
I think he's on about 80 grand a week, allegedly. But he is coming to the end of his contract. I think this is either a year and a half or 6 months to go. But he can. I think a cross-border thing. Remember Dembele? We got him for a song, so we could potentially get him. I can't see him coming in. I'd love to see him come in, personally speaking, but I can't see him coming in. Maybe he's one for the summer. But it'd be great if we could get him in. My God, what a player! He's decent. What a player! I think he's about 6'2". Me and my height. He's a big fella, and he's not afraid to play ball. If you know what I mean, from out the back. I know Joe's starting to get a bit afraid of the Packy Bonner, the Dracula, hates crosses. He starting to. That's an old one for the kids there, lads. So yeah, it'd be great to get him in, but I can't see it. It's maybe summertime if he does come in at all.
I mean, Michael's saying here, has anyone seen him play? Because the few times I've not been impressed. I haven't seen him play at all. I just read about him.
I think he's played in a number of the cup competitions for Liverpool. I think 2 seasons ago they got to both domestic cup finals, and he played in a lot of the matches. I think they both went to penalty shootouts against Chelsea. But I haven't seen enough of him because he just doesn't get enough games. I think he got a few games recently, didn't he, when Alisson Becker was injured. But I kind of agree with Brian. I don't see us signing a goalkeeper in this window. But maybe a pre-contract to get him in the summer makes more sense. I think we've got more urgent positions that need to be filled in this window. And I'm a wee bit disappointed that we haven't done business quickly, because under Ange, I think we had quite a bit of success with getting players in the door at very early January, if not even late December, I think in the case of Alistair Johnson last year. And I see Ange is at it again, a couple of, big profile signings already at Tottenham. And I don't like it if we're, wait until the last 48 hours of the window to try and do our business, when desperation's set in by then.
Okay, and so those other positions, Robert, that we need to fill, are they the most obvious ones that we're all talking about?
I would say so. I think left back, we need cover. If, whether Bernabe leaves or not this window, I think we need a left back. I think we need a bit more height in the team. In defending set pieces, we lost really bad goals at Perth and at home to Motherwell. Just a bit disorganised, and I think we need more height in the team. And so I see left back as a must, although I think Taylor played pretty well in a couple of the games just before the winter shutdown. And I think we need a striker. And again, I'd rather have a striker that was a bit taller than what we have just now. I think, again, when you think about defending set pieces, in the days of Musa and Eddie, they were pretty effective and quite often defending the near post to balls being delivered into the box. So I just think the team overall is a bit small, lacking a bit of physicality. I'd love a hard man in midfield as well, but we've had a couple of attempts, I think, to sign defensive midfield players like Abelgard a year or two ago that didn't work out. Tomoki's not really worked out. He's injured just now. So I'd like to, when I was doing a bit of reading before this podcast, I was looking at that Barcelona game that we won in 2012 at Parkhead, and we had Ledley, Mulgrew, and Wanyama in the same midfield, and that was a lot of tackling power. That was a lot of physicality, and we've lacked that physicality, I think, since Scott Brown retired.
Yeah.
See, the problem with signing a physical midfielder is that we play Callum McGregor every week. So anybody who's signed to that position is just not going to get a game, or they're going to be coming off the bench and they're going to get very little chance to establish themselves in the team. So for that reason, I don't really see it. Now, you've got O'Reilly, you've got Paulo Bernardo there, who are both over 6 foot and fairly physical. Bernardo in particular has showed that he's not scared to put the boot in when required. And I think that sort of the emergence of him would probably put pay to his signing any other sort of taller, bigger physical midfielder. That and the fact that Callum McGregor's the first name in the team sheet and never gets dropped. So I don't see that happening. But just getting back to the goalkeeper for a minute, Kelleher, I don't know whether I don't know much about him either. I don't watch much Liverpool reserves. But if that deal is something that Brendan Rodgers wants, then it is absolutely something we should be able to do. We have the finances, and if the players are willing to come, then we should make it happen. A lot of people say, no, he's out of our price range. He certainly isn't out of our price range, especially in the last year of his contract. So if we see him as the future in the goalkeeping position, then we should absolutely be signing him.
I have heard that he is interested in coming. How old is he? No idea.
He's 23, I think.
He's 25 years.
25.
Okay. So still pretty young for a goalie, but
keeper, sure.
Yeah, pretty good.
So we're talking about players coming in. We're talking about possibly we've signed this winger, this German winger. I saw an interesting tweet, which I will share here. This one. If you can read that from Matty. Roger's going with what he's familiar with. 2 wingers who like to cut inside to either shoot or assist. His first spell, it was Sinclair and Roberts, right and left-footed, cutting in. Now it'll be Palma and Kuhn, right and left-footed, cutting in. O'Reilly is the Armstrong. Now just to find a Tierney. What do you think of that, Brian?
Right, yeah. If he can come in and do a job that the way Scott Sinclair did when he came in, pretty much it speaks for itself. I'd be delighted if we could find another Tierney. I don't know where we're going to get him from, but I don't think the real Kieran Tierney is going to come any stage. There's rumours of Jesse Lingard coming, which I would take. Just
this is interesting because it came up in the group chat, and some people are horrified. Some people in the Celtic World family are absolutely horrified. They're getting the fear. Their mouths dry up in nervous anticipation of such a horror coming into fruition. And others think, well, why not? Brian, make the case for why not Lingard.
Why not? He's something to prove. I don't know if you saw the tweet of him in the gym, and then Paul Scholes. I don't know if it's the real Paul Scholes or somebody basically says, get your head out your ass kind of thing and start playing football. I think he could come up. He could look at something like Sinclair. I think Sinclair was 29 when he came up to us. If he comes in and does a job, if he scores 1 goal or sets something up or scores a free kick, it's something else. Again, he's 31, which I thought he was about 28 myself, but he could do a job. He could definitely, I don't know, he's had a lot of shit, excuse my French, he's had a lot of stuff going on. I think his father died when he was at Man U, and then Mourinho came in and ostracised him. I think he had to look after his younger brother. Okay, he's got his haters, as the young ones say, but he could come in, he's a footballer, he can come in and do a job. You don't go from that, you don't just. I would take Dele Alli as well. I don't care. Anybody.
Right. But before you go too mad, let's go over to Stephen to say why he would be disgusted if that fella was to join our club.
Yeah, I think I mentioned on Twitter that signing Lingard would be the final nail in the coffin of the credibility of our scouting and recruitment department. So if that's the best they can come up with to solve problem positions, then we really are in trouble. As Brian mentioned there, he's 31 years old. He's made 17 appearances for Nottingham Forest this year for a sum total of 0 goals and 0 assists. So you say, Brian, he doesn't go from a good player to being a bad player, but he very definitely has gone from being a good player to being a very bad player. He'd be on large wages, English Premier League wages. It would cost us a fortune, and it's another Freddie Ljungberg. It's a guy who used to be a good player, who's all reputation now with nothing to back it up. And surely we can do better than that.
Agree with you on the recruitment. If that's the best we can do, you know what I mean, picking up sort of has-been Premier League players. But if he was available, I suppose I'm looking at it from the glass half full kind of thing. We're not really. Hopefully, we'll get Kuhn in. I think he's a done deal. But who else are we really looking to get? Who do you think really genuinely think we're going to get in?
Well, who knows? But it's nice to have a blend of youth and experience, isn't it? And if he's not a has-been, if he's still got something,
he did well for West Ham. Remember, he went on loan to West Ham.
He did very well, and I climb a hill with a West Ham fan most mornings, and I was talking to him about Ljungberg as we struggled sweatily up to the summit, and I was asking him, and he said he made the mistake of not signing for West Ham when he had the chance. He could have. And that was his best period of his career, really. Concentrated time period was when he was on loan at West Ham. But he wouldn't touch him with a barge pole.
I think it's interesting, Brian, that you mentioned Jesse Lingard and Dele Alli in the same sentence because, if you go back to the World Cup in Moscow in 2018, they were 2 of England's outstanding players in the tournament. And their decline has almost been in parallel because, Dele Alli a bit younger, of course, but both of them have really gone downhill. And I wouldn't touch either of them, quite frankly. there must be better options for us. Many much better options.
I think we need to learn a lesson here, and assuming that because someone plays in the Premier League that they're all automatically going to do well in Scotland. We've got a very recent example in Nat Phillips of why that's not the case. So there has to be more substance to it than just he has done well in the Premier League in the past. You know, current form is got to be something, and it has to be taken into account. And he's just not kicked a ball this season.
Yeah, you mentioned Freddie Ljungberg, but there was also Carlton Cole, who had been a very successful West Ham player, but I think he scored against East Kilbride in the Cup, and that was about it. And who was the other beast that we had up front under Ronnie Dyla that season? The real
Kazim Richards.
Yes.
Well, before we go down memory lane too much, that's kind of the next section we're going to be talking about all these players. So let's round this one off by talking about the fact that no matter what happens, Joe Hart's going to be with us till the end of the season. Yeah. Do we all think that the clock is ticking down on him and his Celtic days, and this is his last season at Celtic? Stephen, take that one.
Yeah, well, it definitely should be because the decline in his performances is there for all to see. It's in the data, and it's quite clear. I think the sort of a really obvious example of it was the goal that we conceded to Rangers in the recent Glasgow derby. It's a good strike from Tavernier, but I think Joe Hart, 5-10 years ago, would have saved it. He just wasn't able to move his feet quick enough and get over to it. It wasn't right in the top corner. And I think that was savable. And I think, as Robert mentioned there, the goals we've conceded from set pieces have got a lot to do with the fact he's just rooted to his line now, and he's lost his confidence to come for crosses and punch balls away and just come through crowds of players and get the ball out of the box. So if we're not seriously considering replacing him for next season, then it's a terrible mistake. Now, I honestly think it's a mistake not signing a goalkeeper either last summer or this window, because for no other reason being with a Joe Hart injury at the moment away from Scott Bain being in goals for crucial matches, and that's a horrific prospect for any Celtic fan. And you can't depend on a guy like Joe Hart not to get an injury or even a sending off. It happens to goalkeepers every now and again. And then you're back to Scott Bain. Even for the point of view of competition for places, we should be signing another goalkeeper. And I can't believe we're not.
Well, as you can see, all these comments here, they're all sort of singing the same tune. He's been a great servant, and it's been a lot of fun, but maybe the time has come to part company, which is very much the theme of this musical treat, Robert, that I'm about to lay upon you.
You're about to be blessed.
Gav, you continue to surpass yourself. Outstanding.
Dear, dear.
I can't believe you
Certainly keep
got.
him for
We've got to
another
give
6
it.
months.
I can't believe you got
Apologies
reflexed.
to the Blue Belt there, who are big Celtic fans. So we must apologise to them for that.
Yeah,
I do
Bobby
remember the
Bluebell.
original.
I'm gonna link him in on the tweet of that and see if he's horrified or chuffed with it. I'm not sure which it's going to be.
That Bluebell song will never be the same anymore. Anytime I hear it
Don't
on the
say that.
radio, it's the
He'll have the
Adam
lawyers on it.
Macaulay version. That was excellent.
You hit some high notes quite well there, Gav, I have to say. Quite impressive.
That's it. Eurovision
You ever
beckons. I mean,
a
Ireland
choir
are
boy?
Some
the
funny
new Johnny
comments there.
Logan, you know.
Oh, jeez, we don't need a new one of those. Okay, so that was Joe Hart. So now it's time to move on to our next section, which is called Projects or Proven, which is where we're going to pick one player for each of these two categories. A terrible proven player, a proven player who came in for decent money or with a big reputation, and we all thought was going to be great, but then they flattered to deceive. And then the other one is the best project player we can think of, or our favorite project player, somebody who came in with minimal fanfare, cheap maybe, or unheard of, who went on to great things. Now, it'll take me a little while now to get the screen sharing going here, but Stephen, you're going to start first with your terrible proven player. And as you're speaking, I'll add some imagery. So take it away.
Okay, so for me, when you talk about terrible proven players, the name that springs up the furthest is Tommy Gravesen. And Tommy Gravesen was a guy we signed directly from Real Madrid. And if you're signing players directly from Real Madrid, and from Real Madrid's first team, no less, then you're expecting a really good player. And Real Madrid has signed Tommy Gravesen from Everton in 2005. And he was really unbelievable for Real Madrid. And unbelievable in the sense that nobody could believe how bad he was. To the point where there was a rumour flying around that they had signed a wrong player. There was another player playing for Everton at the time called Lee Carsley, an Irish guy who I think he won about 40 caps for Ireland, and he looked exactly like Gravesen. He was quite physical, quite robust, and he was completely bald. So the rumour was that they'd actually meant to sign him, but signed Gravesen instead. Gravesen at Madrid played in the same team as Zinedine Zidane, David Beckham, and Luis Figo. So this was a really good Real Madrid team, and we managed to sign him after he was only there for a year. We signed him in 2006 for an undisclosed fee, rumoured to be around about the $2.5 million mark. Now, huge things were expected of Gravesen coming from Madrid with that sort of pedigree, but it's suffice to say that it didn't work out for him, and he only made 22 appearances for Celtic. Had some notable moments in that he scored in 2 separate games against the old Rangers. And in one particular game, he scored a hat-trick against St Mirren and sort of won us the game almost single-handedly. So he had his moments, but he just was either unwilling or completely unable to follow basic instructions on the park, to the absolute frustration of Gordon Strachan, who was the manager, and he just got fed up with him and sent him off on loan to Everton, where he spent a few months and then basically gave up football. The good news story for Gravesen is his life really took a turn for the better when he gave up football. A lot of ex-pros in those situations sink into obscurity. But apparently, Tommy Gravesen made something at $100 million from a combination of real estate deals and playing poker in Las Vegas. Ended up going out with a porn star. He's now back in Denmark, and he's gone out with a Danish Czech model. Can't remember her name at the moment. So all well that ends well for Tommy. And he speaks very well of his time at Celtic. He was on one of those open goal live shows a couple of years back and really gushed about his time at Celtic. Still retains an enormous affection for the club. So really, really, really good guy. Some great stories about how mental he was and the things he got up to at the team. I was listening to a few of them today. One that stood out was he stayed quite close to Aidan McGeady, and he offered to go halfers on a car with him that they could share driving to training. Rather than just one drive one day and another drive the next day, he wanted to buy a car. So he was just a little bit different, bit of a character, but it just never worked out for him at Celtic, despite, huge expectations.
Bit of a character, but was he not like a desperate bully boy in the changing room and getting the younger players in headlocks and all that? Sounds like he would have been a right pain to have.
Yeah, I think he was, but I've never really heard anyone speaking that badly about him. They all talk about him in sort of humorous terms. Because a guy like Simon Ferry from Open Goal was in and around the reserve team when Gravison was there, and he said it was a great laugh, and he was always taking. He got banished to train with the reserves at one point, and he was always trying to take the reserve team into the players' lounge after games just to wind up the management. And look, he does come across at times as maybe a bit of a bully, but I haven't heard anybody speaking really badly of him.
Everyone thought he was just funny. Says, love it. It's not funny if you're a young, academy player with you're being choked around the neck on the floor by big ex Hell's Angel from Denmark. And everyone's laughing at you. Don't think I'd enjoy that. Maybe that's PTSD from Smaliky's brand. I don't know. But,
I think he played in the. Did he? I think he might have played in the win when we beat Manchester United. Not quite certain, but I remember one of his goals against Rangers was the famous game when Kenny Miller scored for us against Rangers.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Brian, you have a photograph with him outside Celtic Park, don't you?
Yeah, I think it was my 40th. I can't remember when was it. 2004. What age was I? About 20 years ago. Yeah, 30th. We just sort of hung around the park and managed to bump into Strachan and Tommy and Scott Brown and Hartley and stuff. But he was a real nice guy, and he couldn't do enough. He was like I think he just needed reassurance. He was delighted that Tommy can we get a photograph, and I remember him having massive hands, putting his hand. It was their photograph, like it was just his hands. He shook my hand and then the near broke my fucking. You know what I mean? He was a big strong animal, but I think he was I don't know, maybe it's a touch of autism in there with Tommy. I think he was about ADHD or something. He was like number 2 in Call of Duty ever. He's the second highest score in Call of Duty. And when he went back to his mum and dad's house, he would have lived in the garage or lived in the attic and played on the Xbox and stuff. He just seemed a bit of an introvert. Even when he played, what was the team he played for? Was it Hamburg before he went to Everton? I think I can't remember. It was a German team anyway, but he would have went out and he would have went out and bought some of the fans lunch and stuff, But I don't know if it's urban myth or truth.
Well, so there's lots of stories about him. There's a fair amount of fondness for him, but as Stephen points out, he was bought for decent money from Real Madrid, and we expected great things from him on the pitch, and he didn't deliver. Another man who didn't deliver is Robert's choice. Robert, do you want to talk to us about your choice?
Yeah, I mean, I chose the strange and mysterious case of Marvin Comper. And, not a lot to say about his Celtic career, quite frankly, but it's quite interesting as to, maybe why we bought him in the first place. And he was signed in the beginning of January 2018, and this was the 4th transfer window for Brendan Rodgers in his first spell with the club. And in that transfer window, we also signed Jack Henry, Scott Bain, Charlie Masunda. So it doesn't go down as one of our most successful transfer windows. But I think the issue was that when Brendan came to Celtic, and over the first 18 months or so, we had so many problems at centre-back. And I thought the perspective was interesting that, when Brendan came at first, we started with Kolo Toure, who was Brendan's boy, and Owen O'Connell. And then both of them sort of got moved out the way. Eric Sviatchenko had a run at centre-half. And then by the second half of the Invincible seasons, it was nearly all Dedrick Boyata and Jozo. And then into the start of the second half of the season, there was a European game, quite an important European game away from home, where we had to go with a central defence of Nir Bitton and a very, very young Christopher Ayer. So we'd had all this chopping and changing. And my understanding was that at the end of 2017, two of Rodgers' big requests was a proven centre-half that could walk straight into the first team, and also maybe a younger centre-half player that we could develop over a period of time. And, so we got Henry and we got Comper. I have to say, I mean, he was 32 when we bought him, and I'd never heard of him, but that's not unusual because many of Celtic signings these days are players I've never heard of. So, but I did phone my brother, who's lived in Germany for 40 years, and my brother John said, very good player, very steady, nearly 300 games under his belt in professional football, 4 or 5 good seasons with Hoffenheim, a decent transfer to Fiorentina in Italy. It lasted about 18 months, then back to RB Leipzig. 1 cap for Germany in a game against England, although that was a few years before we signed him. So, and again, in Rodgers' season 2, we played 62 games, competitive games that season. None of the central defenders played even 40 games. So there was too much mix and match going on, maybe because Jozo was a bit injury prone. And so when we moved for Comper was right after we'd lost 4-0 at Tynecastle in the league, where, our long unbeaten domestic record under Rodgers came to an end. So my feeling is that he was signed with a view to being a starter and also being someone who could help develop Henry and Ayer. So we paid about £1 million for Comper, which on a standalone basis is not a huge amount. But he had to wait until March. He did have a little injury. He played against Morton in the Scottish Cup quarter-final against Morton at Parkhead. And I read the match reports on BBC and on Sky, and the only reference to Marvin Comper in both was that he nearly gave a goal away with his first involvement in the match. He had a stray pass which let a Morton guy right through, but I think Jozo was playing alongside him, I think rescued the situation. So he got substituted by Callum McGregor after 83 minutes, and that was the end of his Celtic.
Unbelievable.
He did not play again. We were at Ibrox the following week to play Rangers in the league, and the famous, what's the goalie, Dane Tam match that we won 3-2, where Jozo got sent off by Willie Collum, no less, and we were forced to bring on Jack Henry. So Marvin Comper wasn't even on the bench for the game at Ibrox, and a very young Jack Henry came on, as part of that rear guard action in the last 20 minutes. So you could say, well, we only paid $1 million for him, but he was one of the highest paid players at the club. He was on about £35,000 a week. Similar kind of money to Bruni, Scott Sinclair, Musa. And so by the time you throw in agents' fees and all the rest, and he stayed 18 months before he went to Duisburg, could have cost us between £3.5 and £4 million. So obviously had once been a very, very good player, and for whatever reason, he didn't cut it. at.
Well, they reckoned his legs had gone, didn't they? Think his legs had gone, and they saw that almost immediately. But let me just clarify for a few people in the comments who are saying, "Why the hell are we going on about past players?" The reason is we're in a transfer window, and we've just signed a guy, and there's a lot of toing and froing among Celtic fans as to whether he's a project or he's proven. Is he up to the standard? And did he cost enough? Should we not be spending more money? And we're just having a little look back to see places where our expectations weren't fulfilled or our expectations were wrong about players. Either we didn't have high expectations and they exceeded them, turned out to be great, or we had high expectations and they turned out to be complete duds. Because you can't prove these people, you can't have an opinion on people until you see the proof of how they fit into the whole system.
I think the other issue, if I may just make one last comment in general on this, is that the vagaries of the transfer model that we operate is that, the success of selling Kieran Tierney for 25 million can mask 10 disasters at 2 or 3, million each, because, everybody's keen to take credit when we get a windfall gain, but who's really accountable, whose responsibility for all the duds that we've signed? And there's been many of them in the last 10, 20 years. So I think Kwon Yer is a good example. Yeah, he's a good example of money down the drain, and whether it was lack of due diligence or we don't know what the process was in signing him.
And Paddy Lavery's also right. It's because there's nothing else to talk about. So let's carry on. Brian, you're going to tell us your pick in this section.
Mine's going to be very, very quick. Barkas, £5 million for a goalkeeper. I think it was a panic buy. I think we were talking about getting Fraser Forster back, and then he knocked us back to go onto the bench at Spurs. And I didn't really know too much about Barkas, to be fair, but he was seen as being a proven player. Apparently rated at €10 million at one stage, and Udinese had bid $6 million for him, which was rejected. A bit of problems with injury initially when he was at AEK Athens, and he'd a run of 22 clean sheets out of 41 appearances. So we signed him in July 20 for a £5 million on a 4-year deal.
£5 million.
£5 million, and I reckon it cost us 281,000 per game. And I remember
per save.
No, well, he didn't really save too. I don't know who coined the phrase "cabbage hands" for him, but the man that just didn't work out. It was COVID. No confidence. He was, I don't know. It was just a disaster. In the back of my mind, I have a funny feeling that the reason we signed him because he was only on about £8,000 a week, and the sort of 5 million, was he wasn't on a huge amount of money per week, and that was the main thing the club were looking at. Well, we can get away with £8,000 a week or whatever it was, but absolute howler. Embarrassed.
He left for a free.
Went free. He went on loan to Utrecht.
That tells its story.
And he's now, I don't know, we think he's even second choice at Utrecht. But again, who recruited him needs lined up against the wall. Absolutely. It was, Julian cost 7 million, he cost 5. Absolute pudding. Probably the worst goalie. And you could see it in his face, West Ham, big Mikel Antonio landing down on him. That was the game Lee Griffiths' career pretty much ended for us, and he got booed in the game, and then Ange just went, "No, that's enough." Bang.
Well, there's the Laird of Lanark, Brian, in the comments, and Barkas is a really good keeper, just never worked out, and has been brilliant in the Dutch league. That happens in football.
I spoke to somebody about Celtic. Spoke to somebody at Celtic a couple of years ago about Barkas because I'd never seen a goalkeeper with a lower saves to shots ratio. It seemed that nearly everything was going in. He lost a couple of howlers against Rangers at Parkhead. But I was told that he was, he arrived during COVID and he was massively homesick, almost living on his own somewhere up the West End. All the restaurants were shut. He loved his Greek food. That wasn't available to him. The training was all curtailed as well because of COVID. So he didn't, what was summarised to me as he did not get the Celtic experience at all because of all the restrictions that were in place. That may, you could make the same excuse possibly for others like Ayeti, but
Shved was the same. Apparently, Shved was the same, and there wasn't really much done about his extracurricular stuff and the Russian community, or Ukrainian, I think. But that's something that's very important, and I think we've got better at that as a club. Is the emotional management of players. As you said,
let's do something. Let's do something positive for our emotional management and move it on to players that pleased us. So, Stephen, are you up first? I think you're up first. If this is your choice.
Yeah, that's my choice. My choice is the great Tommy Rogic, an Australian. Obviously, I've got a certain affection for Tommy Rogic because he's held in very high esteem down in these parts, and it was great to see him succeed at Celtic. It wasn't an easy road for him. Signed for Celtic in 2013 from the Central Coast Mariners, but didn't really kick on for a number of years due to just not really adapting to the Scottish game. There was question marks about his engine, his fitness, and he ended up back on loan in the A-League at Melbourne Victory for a full season. A season it didn't really go well. I think he had a knee injury which made him miss most of the season. But he ended up back at Celtic and no one really expected much from him. But it wasn't really until Brendan Rodgers arrived at the club for his first spell that he really kicked on into being a fantastic player and turned into an absolute Rolls Royce. And through several different managers, some fancied him, some didn't so much due to maybe his inability to track back as much as he probably should have. But his touching the ball was up there with any player I've ever seen at Celtic Park, and he really was the very definition of a scorer of great goals. Almost every goal he scored was one for a highlights reel, and when he finished up his time at Celtic, his highlights reel of goals was just really something to behold. So only cost us £500,000.
£500,000
from the A-League.
That's for nothing.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he'd gone back to the A-League on loan, everybody sort of wrote him off as if that's it, it's not going to happen. But fair play to him. He come back, he rolled his sleeves up and got stuck back in again, and reaped the reward. Had to give the game away probably too early. He's only still in his early 30s, could still have been playing, but he had some very important personal family business that he correctly felt was way more important than football. Now I think with Tommy Rogic, there's a lesson there for the likes of Marco Tilio, who similarly seems to be on his way out to maybe a loan back down to the A-League. But it doesn't have to be over. And if you show the correct endeavour, if you show the correct attitude when you come back from your loan period, then you could still have a really good career at Celtic, and certainly one of the best midfielders that's been at Celtic in the last decade.
Yeah, God love Tommy.
Looks so young there, doesn't he?
Yeah. I wish I'd picked Tom Rogic for mine.
Well, I've got to say, I'm delighted that everyone so far has been pronouncing his name correctly, because it's absolutely shocking to me that someone who has given us so many amazing moments, still people can't get his simple name right, In fact, I watched this one show recently where there were these three guys and they did this feature on the best ever Australian to play for Celtic. And one of those three guys kept calling him Rogic. And when I hear that, I turn off. I have to tell you, when I'm listening to something, if anyone says Rogic, I'm out of there. Here's a little aid memoir. Defy logic. Do not be tempted to pronounce it the same way as logic. Look at all these Balkan names. Say these to yourself.
Yeah.
How can people get Gogic right and not Rogic? I ask you. What do you think of that, Brian? Do you ever say Rogic?
Never. Rockets. Could be worse. Could be Neil Lennon call him Gustav Lagerbelke. Something pulled him out on that. Lagerbelke, he called him.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard Pat Bonner on BBC Radio Scotland?
Edward.
Pat Bonner is the king of butchering names.
Odson Edward. Brilliant. Oh,
okay, and then who's up next? Another very popular face. Let me get a nice picture of him. There you go. This fella.
Oh.
Gav, that was my pick, Victor Wanyama. He signed for us in the summer of 2011, so it was just at the end of Neil Lennon's first season in charge, and he had just turned 20 years old when we signed him, but he already had a decent amount of football under him at Beerschot in Belgium. Obviously the first and only Kenyan to play for our club. And that's a country that's never qualified for a World Cup, rarely sets the African Cup of Nations on fire. So, fairly unique for somebody to emerge from that country and then have the sort of career that he's enjoyed. In fact, he is still playing football. He is still only 32 years old just now, and it seems a long time ago since he left us. He cost us £900,000, and that was fantastic business because when we sold him almost 2 years later to Southampton, the reputed fee was £12.5 million. So that makes it one of the biggest windfall gains in Celtic's history. Right up there with the kind of money we made out of Virgil. Obviously, Tierney's, our biggest ever gain, but Ayer was also a pretty significant gain. So really good business by the board or by the recruitment team or whoever takes the credit for these matters when they do go well. And he was at the time it was a record fee for a record outgoing fee for the SPL. And I wish we had more deals like that where they're just sort of phenomenal successes. He played 91 games for us, scored 13 goals. I remember being at his debut against St Johnstone, a game we lost at Parkhead, and he did not play well. He was at centre half, but when he found his position in central midfield, I thought he was brilliant for us. And we all remember the Barcelona game in 2012. We almost remember it as the Tony Watt match, but Victor Wanyama scored the first goal that night, back post header.
Made him the first ever Kenyan to score in the Champions League.
Yeah, and it was a bit of an unfair jump. I think it was against Jordi Alba. So, on all counts, I think Victor was a bit too much. And he was a real physical specimen.
Strong.
He could play. And pity that he didn't stay longer, but it was good business. It was a successful piece of business for us. He had a good 3 seasons with Southampton. Then he was sold on to Tottenham, and he had a couple of good seasons there. He sat on the bench in a Champions League final against Liverpool. And he's now in his 4th year playing in Montreal in Major League Soccer. So he's still having a good career. He's still playing for Kenya internationally. And I think somebody that we would fondly remember. Got some spectacular goals for us, but I think the Celtic fans like somebody that puts themselves about a bit physically, wins a lot of tackles, wins a lot of challenges in the air, but can still pass a ball on the ground. So
the comment that I put up there, Robert, says we could do with a guy like that right now.
Oh, absolutely. And I think maybe they're not easy to find. That type of defensive midfield player or all-round type of player. I love them, but I should have picked Tom Rogic as mine. But thanks, Stephen. That was a great summary. So
Every time you say Kenyan, sounds like Fenian, says Alex. All right.
Well, he was known as the Kenyan Fenian when he was there.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah.
There you go. Well, here's another very popular man that Brian has chosen.
Yeah, Morton Warhorse, Weghorst, again, another one signed by the great Tommy Burns. In 95, 6'3", you know me and my height, I love a big man, said the Bishop. First couple of seasons, poor lad injured, and then he broke in the team. Whenever Vim took over, played 31 out of the 36 games in the 97-98 season. I just liked him. Solid big player, not afraid to get the boot in. Had a bit of a shot on him also, but again came from Dundee, 500,000, something like that. And everything was made around the time of the Three Amigos. When Morton came in, and he was fantastic for us, and it was quite sad. Under Dr. Joey, he wrecked his cruciate ligament, and then in April 2000, he had, I think the pronunciation was Guillain-Barré syndrome, which Marcus Babbel from Liverpool had, and he ended up being in a wheelchair for a year. And I just really liked him. He apparently he was there beside Christian Eriksen. He was a Danish assistant manager, and he pretty much sat beside Christian Eriksen whenever he had his cardiac arrest. And I just loved him I just liked him as him and Reaper. I thought they were fantastic for us. But again, another one maybe falls under the radar, but I just really liked him as a player, and again he only cost 500,000. So there we go, big Morton.
I have a memory of Morton Weghorst in the Venglos season, where it gave me one. I don't know whether it was Aberdeen away or Motherwell away, but it was about 6-0 or 7-0, and Weghorst had an assist, which was a Rabona pass from about 25 yards that Reggie Blinker then volleyed into the net. Amazing goal. Weghorst is out in the right wing, twists one leg round the other and launches this Rabona, and Blinker finished it off. I'll need to see if I can find some footage of that on YouTube. But amazing skill. Good player.
Yeah, that game, the Liverpool game, I remember watching that. I was coming back from New York, and my dad recorded the game for me. I remember watching that game, and then that bastard McManaman, the last kick of the ball. I used to remember that game. The UEFA Cup, wasn't it? Or a Cup Winners' Cup or something. Can't remember. But McManaman, never liked McManaman after that. But big Cy Donnelly scored. Sid scored that game. Or Jackie Mack scored.
McNamara, and I think the other goal was a penalty, I think.
Well, a nice little trip down memory lane there at some of the stars and the duds from the transfer market. And, time will tell. We'll have to see how these guys pan out. It's only with the benefit of hindsight you can look back and say, people doubted Luis Palma or Nicholas Kuhn. Look at what they went on to achieve over the years at Celtic. What a bargain they were. We picked them up for X amount and sold them for whatever. You just don't know.
You got to remember, Henrik Larsson's first 2 games were pretty awful.
Mm-hmm. So we reserve judgment, and we'll see how these guys do when they come in. Hopefully, there's another couple of decent players to join us. But let's turn our attention to Sunday League football, because it's time to have a look at our little social media choices of the week. Brian, this is yours.
Yeah, it just reminds me of playing on a Sunday and literally dragging a guy out of bed to come and play. He was still pissed. It was up near the Egg bar in Belfast. But you've got, obviously there was a couple of decent players in the midfield. Up front, you had I'm just loving that there. I'm looking at the positions I would have played. Probably the centre back or the right back would have been mine, or up front. But it's just so funny. The fattest player, the loudest player. There always was a shouter at the back who couldn't trap a bag of cement.
And
The most
goalkeeper.
easily persuaded, that would have been someone who just, God love him, right your nets, and then you never spoke to him the rest of the game because for the fear that you would have to go in the nets. Fittest player, right wing, yeah. Only left-footed player.
Yeah.
I love the way the second worst available player is at left back. You know, but the thing about it is that it would have been a complete long ball up front. I just saw that and I thought it was funny. You know, fastest player, tallest.
Yeah.
But
There's a lot of truth in that.
I wondered whether you could compile a Celtic team that fitted into some of these categories from all the years that we've watched the team, and Colin Kazim Richards, comes up again, maybe as the fattest player that we've seen in the first team. So
poor Mike Galloway used to get a bit of a turn, didn't he? For carrying a bit of temper, and Paul Byrne from
the winger,
Dublin, he came along from. I think he signed him from Bangor. He scored 2 wonder goals against the old Rangers.
You got one at Ibrox in the New Year game, right?
It was like Mark Hughes' goal against. Do you remember? It was against Bayern Munich or something to win the UEFA or the UEFA Cup. He took it on the outside, but bit of crack. Sunday League
in Rotterdam. Here's mine. This is by What the Juice, who I follow on Twitter. I think he might be from Belfast. I'm not sure. He says, most people have heard of Karl Marx, but very few know of his sister, Anya, an Olympic runner. Her name is still mentioned at the start of every race.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It's quite smart.
Excellent.
Anya Marx, you see, in case anyone's wondering. And then this
thanks for that, Gav.
Well, this is one that needs no explanation, but I'll ask you for it anyway, Stephen.
So this is one from Fit My Tweets, who's a well-known Twitter cartoonist who loves to poke fun, particularly at Rangers, if we're being honest. And this is like a cartoon of old Voldemort peering through the wire fence during the Rangers' recent friendly defeat to Hertha Berlin after being sent off. I just love the way they've got him done up there as Count Dracula, peering over the fence in an evil sort of way. And that's been hilarious this week, reading about their training camp, hasn't it? They're the gift that keeps on giving, really. I mean, Clement might be a good manager, I don't know, but I feel as if that sort of thing, he's setting himself up for a glorious failure. And the reports of their training camp, where they've sold tickets to wealthy Rangers supporters apparently for $7,500 each to go and stay with the team during their training camp, and these guys are all pissed and causing all sorts of dramas at breakfast time and harassing the players night and day. It's just brilliant. It's so funny, and if even half of it's true, it's just tremendous stuff.
What must the players think of that when they're getting pestered over their cornflakes by guys who've paid a few quid just to see them? They must be thinking this is tin pot.
Who are already
just imagine it though, can't you? Billy the Bigot will be asking James Tavernier to sing the stash while he's tucking into his cornflakes,
Big Ivan.
Pissed for the night before.
Big Ivan from Portadown stealing the brown sauce,
I mean, I like that tweet there. That's very funny, the football tweet. But I don't know if I really share the hilarity of the actual event of him being behind the wire. It wasn't. Why is that funny? Can someone explain to me?
Armored cars and tanks and guns.
Yeah. Apart from there's lots of funny things have come from it.
It's just his face. It's just standing. It's just one of those moments that are caught in time. He just standing there, like it's almost like a meme. I didn't realize it was him. Well, I realized it was him, but I thought it was somebody transfixed his head on the wire fence. Then I realized it was actually him, the head behind the wire. Very good, Maestro.
I think it's quite similar to some of Pedro Caixinha's pictures. There was one particular one of him where he was talking to reporters while standing in a hedge, and it it put me in mind of that one. So it's got Pedro Cachina written all over it. It's so funny. Good crack, Gav. Come on, laugh a bit.
No, it is good crack. I'm just trying to
It was a little bit funny.
work it out. I think it's because you want your manager to exude control and some sort of degree of elegance or something, and he's there, he's on the job, he's masterminding everything. When you're stuck behind a fence peering in like somebody who's not allowed into the country club or something, it's a funny image. I suppose that's it. All right, gentlemen. Well, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you very much for your contributions. Thanks to everyone in the comments who's been joining in. It's been a lot of fun, little trip down memory lane. And you'll be delighted to hear that the next show on Thursday, we have a game to preview, at least. So we're back to talking about individual games. We've had a couple of great guests on. And I think we've managed the sort of downtime particularly well, especially bringing in big guns like Robert.
Hardly.
Thank you for being with us, Robert.
No, it's a pleasure. I've enjoyed it, and look forward to watching Thursday's preview of the Bucky Thistle game.
Yeah, that'll be an unusual one.
I'd like you to cover why they wear the hoops, because I have absolutely no idea. But maybe you can save that for Thursday.
I think we've already come across that. We did a feature on other teams that wear the hoops. I think they were loaned a bunch of strips and then adopted it from that point forward.
Never give them back.
All right, gents. Until Thursday, hail, hail.
Hail, hail, lads.
Well,
Hail, hail. Oh.